Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through the noise and really focus on the signal. Today, we've got a fascinating mix of sources. We're looking at everything from the latest in national politics, headlines, to some pretty critical updates in personal finance that, well, could affect you directly.
Yeah, we'll be unpacking recent political moves, thinking about former President Trump's strategies, both foreign and domestic.
Right, and also the changing world of cable news. A really deep look at immigration history, current events, the human side, and then, crucially, MEDICARE updates.
And our mission, like always, is to pull out the most important takeaways from all of this. We want to connect the dots between things that might seem unrelated. The idea is to give you a solid understanding without drowning you in data, focusing on what really matters and maybe why it matters.
Definitely. And some of the things we found, well, they're pretty surprising. We've got details from our sources about a, let's say, secret corporate spreadsheet. And a really chilling personal story about immigration involving a passport marked with a big red J. It's quite something.
Okay, let's unpack this. So our sources kick things off in the political arena. And it's interesting, they really look at the contrast between how leaders present themselves and the often messy reality behind the scenes. Let's start with former President Trump's foreign policy. The sources seem quite critical, especially thinking about his meetings with people like President Zelensky and other world leaders.
Yeah, the assessment is pretty skeptical about his ability to score what you'd call a major foreign policy win. The source basically lays out 5 main reasons for that skepticism.
Okay.
First, it suggests he is some combination of dishonest and, well, maybe delusional. His story often doesn't match the facts. Second, maybe surprisingly for a deal-maker, he seems easily manipulated. And foreign leaders, well, they've apparently noticed.
Right.
Third, the focus seems to be very much on the short term, getting that quick win, the social media buzz, rather than the long, patient work of real diplomacy.
That makes sense. Fourth, a kind of ignorance about what the other side really needs or wants for the bigger picture. And fifth, just the inherent limits of diplomacy itself, No one knows everything, and success can take years to see.
That Putin summit really seems to highlight this, based on what our sources say. Trump apparently went in talking about a ceasefire, but came out reflecting Putin's wish list, essentially. Things like Ukraine giving up land, promising not to join NATO.
Right. And even outlets like Drudge and Fox News apparently called it artless dealing. It does suggest a certain lack of depth in those high-stakes situations.
And the specifics are quite telling, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. The source points out these sort of subtle power plays by Putin hosting on U.S. soil, speaking first at the presser, but also Putin spending time alone with Trump in the Beast, the presidential limo.
Yeah.
That's a major protocol breach, apparently.
Yeah.
Could have let Russian security sweep the car. And then there's the reaction to Putin's comment about the 2020 election being stolen. The source says it triggered Trump's absolutely nuts rant on social media. He apparently claimed, and this is a quote, "We are now the only country in the world that uses mail-in voting," which is true.
Right.
And then called for an executive order to ban mail-in ballots and voting machines.
And who was advising him during this Putin meeting? The source mentions his main people were Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff.
Yeah, Bessent and Witkoff.
Yeah.
Known more for, goods and real estate deals, right? Not exactly seasoned diplomats.
Exactly. And the source suggests Trump thought they were there to talk about land swaps, which kind of misses the point of that particular summit.
It really highlights a potential gap in understanding. And it seems other leaders picked up on this. Moving to the Zelensky meeting, people like Zelensky, Root, von der Leyen, Macron, Merz, Starmer, Maloney, Stubb, they all seem to get it. The art of, flattering Trump while pushing their own agendas, our sources suggest they kind of outmaneuvered him. Zelensky apparently even brought a large group because he was worried about a sneak attack from Trump and J.D. Vance.
A sneak attack. Wow. Did it happen?
No, apparently not, thankfully.
So what did come out of that meeting then, besides avoiding this potential attack?
Well, agreement that Ukraine needs security guarantees, but no real agreement on what that actually means. The Europeans were talking Article V-style guarantees, like NATO.
Yeah.
Trump, meanwhile, hinted he might be open to U.S. troops in Ukraine for a peace deal. So still quite a bit of ambiguity there.
Okay, so from these international complexities, our sources pivot back home to domestic politics. And here's where one source has a pretty sharp take. Republicans think voters flunk Civics 101.
And this plays out in things like the redistricting fights, redrawing the election maps. Speaker Mike Johnson, for example, was very publicly critical of Governor Newsom's plans in California.
Mm.
But the source points out that similar maneuvering happens in places like Texas. Johnson's tweet called the Democrats' move an illegal power grab. It sort of overlooks that both sides often play this strategic game.
And it's not just redistricting. The sources talk about attempts to weaponize impeachment.
Yes, Speaker Johnson warning that if Democrats win the House, they'll immediately impeach Trump.
But that ignores the next step, doesn't it? Removal needs the Senate.
Exactly. It needs a conviction in the Senate, which would take something like 17 Republican votes. Our sources say that's highly unlikely.
So why do it? Why make the threat?
Well, figures like Representative Emanuel Cleaver are quoted saying, articles of impeachment are also articles of recruitment for Trump.
Ah, okay.
The analysis suggests these threats are really effective at firing up certain voters, especially the MAGA base. It's presented as more of a political tool for mobilization than a serious attempt at removal.
Speaking of tools and tactics, the sources mention something they call least surprising news, but it sounds pretty eye-opening. This secret White House spreadsheet.
Right. Apparently tracking 533 companies and trade groups based on how supportive they were of the administration and its policies.
And consulted for corporate requests.
That's what the source says. Now, maybe other administrations have a sort of mental list of who's friendly, but the source calls the Trump administration unbelievably ham-fisted for having an actual spreadsheet like this, potentially even public-facing.
It does seem pretty blatant.
It suggests a very direct link between political favor and corporate access. The source even quotes a 19th century spoilsman, Simon Cameron, saying, an honest politician is one who, when he's bought, will stay bought. It points to a very transactional view of influence, which, raises questions about transparency.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still related to information and influence. Let's talk about the media landscape. Our sources highlight these huge settlements involving Dominion voting systems.
Yeah, pretty significant numbers. Newsmax settled for, what, $67 million?
Right. OAN for an undisclosed amount, and Fox News for that massive $787 million.
That adds up to around $920 million just from Dominion.
And it's not over yet, is it?
No. Smartmatic also has settlements, but they still have a $2.7 billion lawsuit pending against Fox. Plus, suits against individuals like Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell. It's a huge financial fallout from those post-election claims.
And on a lighter note in cable news, the source found MSNBC's rebranding amusing.
Yeah, to MSN Now. Apparently, the new logo is just red and white stripes, no blue, no stars.
So the source joked.
Joked about whether they'll start covering Austrian news now. Just a bit of visual commentary there.
All right, well, that leads us into a topic that's often deeply personal, immigration. Our sources dig into this complex issue. They note how Republicans have criticized Democrats on this for, well, decades now.
For at least 25 years, yeah. And the Democratic response has often been focused on highlighting their own border security efforts.
So the source suggests Democrats have a few paths forward.
Basically, three options, as outlined. One, keep defending the border security record, though that hasn't really changed the debate much. Two, focus on the downsides of the Trump approach. The personal horror stories, the economic impacts.
Okay.
Or three, try to build a more positive case for immigration itself, maybe by pairing policy arguments with compelling personal immigration stories. The source seems to think this third way could offer a genuinely different approach.
And speaking of personal stories, so what does this all mean for individuals? The sources share a really powerful historical story from a reader, REM.
Yeah, about their family.
Yeah.
Austrian Jewish grandparents, mother, uncle. Immigrating from Italy in April 1939. They were refugees fleeing fascism.
The context is just chilling. The Nazi takeover of Austria in 1938.
An uncle sent to Dachau, though thankfully released.
Yeah.
And the grandmother's sheer determination getting passports in February 1939. U.S. visas just a month later, in March 1939.
And the detail about the passport.
It's incredible. A big red J stamped on the grandmother's passport, identifying her as Jewish, right next to the Nazi eagle and swastika. REM describes the feeling looking at the U.S. seal on the final page of that document. Just this palpable sense of relief. It really hits home what that escape meant.
And there's a twist or a postscript related to Austria now?
Yeah, Austria has recently started granting citizenship to descendants of those forced out by fascism. So REM reflects on this irony. Being saved from Austrian fascism by the United States, only to have me saved from American fascism by Austria, given their perspective on the current U.S. climate. It's quite a thought.
Wow. And then the source contrasts this historical rescue with a very recent and deeply troubling story.
Yes, about Luis Leon, an 82-year-old Chilean man. He got asylum here back in 1987, escaping the Pinochet regime, worked here for almost 40 years.
And then what happened?
Earlier this year, he lost his wallet, including his green card. He went to an immigration office to get replacements, and they handcuffed him.
Handcuffed him. An 82-year-old asylum seeker.
Yes. And then deported him. Not to Chile, but to Guatemala, a country he has zero connection with.
That's baffling and incredibly cruel.
It gets worse. He has chronic health issues. His family got a call from a stranger saying he was dead. Thankfully, it was mistaken identity. But imagine their terror.
Oh, my God.
Now he's reportedly in a hospital in Guatemala, and his family is desperately trying to get information, trying to figure out how to bring him home.
These stories are just, they leave you speechless. What stands out to you? How do these narratives really light up the human side of immigration policy then and now?
It's the starkness of the contrast, I think. That image of the family escaping literal state-sanctioned persecution marked by that J, finding safety, and then decades later, a man who had found safety, built a life, losing it all over a lost ID card, ending up abandoned in a country he doesn't know. It just powerfully shows how policies, big or small, written or enforced, have these profound, sometimes devastating consequences for real people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's shift focus now to another area with huge personal impact. Medicare. Millions rely on it, and our sources say it's going through a really disruptive time, especially during the recent enrollment period going into 2025.
A really big change was finally getting rid of the donut hole in Part D prescription drug coverage.
Right, that coverage gap people used to fall into.
Exactly. So now the maximum you'll pay out of pocket for prescriptions drops dramatically from $8,000 in 2024 down to $2,000 in 2025, which sounds great, right?
It does sound great, but there's a catch.
There's what the sources call an unintended consequence. Insurance companies, well, they lost revenue from that donut hole structure, so they had to make up for it. They did that by increasing drug costs elsewhere in their formularies, that's the list of covered drugs,
Okay.
or by raising plan premiums or cutting back on other benefits or some mix of those. The sources note that people using original Medicare plus a Medigap plan, that supplemental insurance and a separate Part D drug plan, were hit particularly hard by these adjustments.
And there were other pressures on insurance companies in 2024, too.
Yeah, post-COVID Medicare costs were apparently rising faster than the payments companies received. Many faced operating losses. So that combination, the donut hole change, rising costs, it forced some insurance carriers and specific plans to just pull out of the market entirely.
Which leaves people enrolled in those plans scrambling, right?
Exactly. Suddenly needing to find a whole new plan for their coverage.
So, looking ahead now to 2026, what do the sources see coming?
For Medigap plans, likely double-digit increases in premiums. Partly because new plans often enter the market with low prices to attract members, but also rising medical costs generally, and some states adding birthday rules.
Birthday rules.
Yeah, rules that let people switch Medigap plans around their birthday without needing medical underwriting. That can increase costs for the insurers. For Medicare Advantage plans, the private alternatives to original Medicare expect more premium hikes, benefit cuts, maybe fewer PPO options, which offer more doctor choice, and more HMOs, which have networks. Higher prescription costs are likely too. And again, more plans might just disappear depending on the state and county.
Now, there's this legislation mentioned, the One Big Beautiful Bill. What's the impact there?
Right. That name likely came from a politician, but the substance is serious. It sets up automatic spending cuts, about $500 billion between 2026 and 2034, unless Congress acts to stop them.
And those cuts could affect?
Potentially, lower payments to doctors and hospitals, which could mean fewer providers willing to accept Medicare patients. And for Medicare Advantage members, maybe losing those extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing coverage.
So uncertainty there depending on future congressional action.
Definitely. But the bill does have some specific changes locked in. One positive one, highlighted by our sources, starting January 1st, 2026. Working seniors who are only enrolled in Medicare Part A, hospital insurance, but have a high-deductible health plan can keep contributing to their health savings accounts, HSAs.
Oh, that's interesting. That wasn't allowed before.
No, it wasn't, so that's a definite change. The bill also delayed negotiation for some high-cost Part D drugs, though arguably those costs might have just been passed on elsewhere anyway.
Okay, and then there's another change coming, but this one is unrelated to that bill. Something about prior authorization.
That's right. A pilot program is starting in 6 states. introducing prior authorization to original Medicare for a few procedures.
Hmm. That's a big shift, isn't it? One of the selling points of original Medicare was always no prior authorization needed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Traditionally, the decision was just between you and your doctor. Prior authorization means the insurance plan in this case, original Medicare, under the pilot, has to approve certain services before you get them. It's definitely a move away from how original Medicare has historically worked.
So with all these changes swirling around, the donut hole fallout, potential cuts, prior authorization pilots, how can you, the listener, navigate this?
The absolute key is being proactive. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan or a standalone Part D drug plan, watch your mail carefully in September. You'll get your annual notice of change, the ANC. This letter spells out all the changes to your current plan for the next year. Premiums, copays, drug coverage, provider network, everything.
And why is holding on to that letter so important?
You need to keep it for 12 months. If your plan unexpectedly leaves the market mid-year, that ANC is your proof. It can grant you a special election period, allowing you to switch plans outside the standard October to December window. Without it, proving eligibility can be tough.
Good tip. And remind us of those main enrollment dates.
The main annual enrollment period, or AEP, runs from October 15th to December 7th every year. That's when most people can change their Medicare Advantage or Part D plans.
But brokers get the info earlier.
Yes, another useful tip from our sources. Independent Medicare insurance brokers actually get access to the next year's plan details on October 1st. So they have a 2-week head start to research and compare options before enrollment officially opens. And of course, resources like Medicare.gov are invaluable for doing your own plan comparisons. You really want to make an informed choice.
Well, we have certainly covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive. Quite a journey.
We really have.
From, the complexities of global diplomacy and the sharp edges of domestic politics, all the way to those incredibly moving personal immigration stories, and then the very practical dollars and cents reality of Medicare changes.
It definitely highlights how important it is to stay informed, doesn't it? Especially in a world just flooded with information and sometimes, well, misinformation.
It really does. Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps. Given everything we've unpacked, the political strategies, the historical echoes and personal stories, the way policy impacts everyday health decisions, how can really understanding these patterns, these individual narratives, help us cut through the noise? How does it equip us, maybe, to figure out what truly matters in that constant flood of news we all face?